What's up, my friend? Welcome to the Aubrey Marcus podcast. Good to meet you as well. This will be an interesting conversation. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm really looking forward to it. You're amazing. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Likewise. So right before we're getting on air here, you mentioned that you're someone who's intentionally gone out to seek your edge, which is a kindred spirit of sorts, but you've actually found it, which is something interesting and a bit unique. What did you mean by that?
Well, so I am, as my wife refers to me, I'm Johnny One Speed. I'm either on or off. I do everything in my life to the absolute max. I have no sense of moderation. And if there were one thing that I really, if I were to have a genie or a wish that could be fulfilled, I would say, I really wish I could be moderate, because I just can't. And because of that lack of moderation, there have been tremendously good things that have come in my life and things that have been very negative in my life because of that Johnny One Speed aspect.
You wouldn't say.
I would.
You wouldn't say.
Yeah, no. Generally, like I'm on 11 all the time. There's nothing but goodness out of that, right? How could that go wrong?
That always just yields you on a straight line to fucking gumdrops and unicorn farts, John. Of course it does.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I have nothing but unicorn farts and gumdrops.
Yeah.
That's it.
All right. Well, that's good. Well, we cleared that story out of the way.
All right, there you go. That's a great podcast.
All right. Yeah. Nice talking to you, and we'll see you later.
So yeah.
All right. So give us some examples.
All right. I'll give you a good example. So, I'll give you this as a really good example. So when I was younger, I was always the kid that was the smallest. And I speak in superlatives, because when I say I was the smallest, entering high school, I was 4'8", 86 pounds, entering high school. So my 11-year-old
Were you
son,
young?
What's that?
Were you young?
I was a July so I was a year behind. So, okay. Even so, like I was so small,
Right.
But I was really, really fast. I was the fastest kid in my elementary school, and, set all the school records in Vienna Elementary, and like, oh my God, this kid's so fast. But as I grew up, kids started getting faster than me. And I wasn't
long
growing.
legs,
longer legs. Well, just mature boys, right? I was fast when everybody wasn't fast.
Right.
And then when kids became fast, I wasn't that fast. So I developed this very early fascination with, oh my God, I grew legitimately. I grew probably 8 to 10 inches in a year, and I sprouted up to 5'5".
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's like, I was so small, and I was fascinated with why are some human beings different than others? And no matter how hard I try and focus my energy, I'm never going to be able to dunk a basketball or win states in track or whatever. Like, I recognize those, okay, I can't do that. And it was a really early good lesson for me, because I was realistic. But at the same time, I have this just ridiculous desire to push myself to the ultimate limit. So as I'm weaving my way through my childhood and trying to figure out, okay, what is it I want to do? What is it? What do I want to grow up and be? What do I want to do? I knew I wanted to be in entertainment. So I was always the kid in student government. I was always very present. Mm-hmm. That early on is like, okay, I want to be in entertainment, lends itself to it. So I'm going to be in entertainment. So I get into college. And when I'm in college, I'm at the University of Virginia. And
I was a spider. Did you know that?
Were you really?
Yeah.
You went to Richmond?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I did not know that. That is crazy. I had, what year did you graduate?
2004.
Okay. So I'm significantly older. I love Virginia, and UVA was great, but there was a bit of an issue that arose in college. And as I was sort of finding my way, I found out I was excellent. I mean, really, really good at drinking.
I discovered the same thing. Maybe it's a Virginia thing. Maybe the state has something to do with it.
It might be. When it's funny how nowadays, I'm so fearful for kids these days, because Back when I was growing up, there was like beer and some people smoked weed.
Were you guys drinking Beast Light?
It was nothing but Milwaukee's Best. And for those who don't know, it's the Beast. Right? It was the Beast in Virginia.
A fellow Beast drinker. I found one on the podcast. You might be the first that knows how to get those $7 24 packs of Beast Light.
Do you want to know what's funny? Is so I'm a little bit older. It was $6.24 for 24 beers, which is the equivalent of a day's ration of beer.
Yeah.
It was marked in a case, and what ended up happening is, you're just with your buddies, you're sitting around, and this is the honest to God's truth. I drank beer not because I wanted to become intoxicated, because I loved beer. I just love cold beer. And as disgusting as Beast was, it wasn't disgusting.
It wasn't disgusting then. No.
It just felt like, wow.
Especially when it had a little bit of ping pong ball flavor tapped into it too. That was the finishing touch. That was the garnish to any good Beast Light.
Exactly. You have Beast. I like how you keep saying light. I was never light.
You're a Beast heavy guy?
I was Beast heavy, dude.
Oh my God, Beast heavy.
So the amount of, we just calculate the number of calories I was consuming at the same time. Right at the same time, I'm in the gym. I'm that guy in the gym who looks like he had an air hose up his ass. Like I was giant. Like I was benching and decline benching and in the weight room every day, and I'm just getting to be huge. Mm-hmm. So here's what ends up happening. So I'm nearly 200 pounds. I'm 5'8.5", right? I'm almost 200 pounds, and all the weight is in my upper body. So I'm doing nothing but decline pressing. Never did a squat a day in my life.
Right.
Never did a leg extension. I'm that guy, like drinking at night, waking up, going to the gym, working out, and getting straight A's in college.
Fraternity?
In college. I did not join a fraternity.
Okay.
And
I was about to bust a secret handshake on you when we found out we were the same fraternity.
Exactly. I was not in a fraternity. And I'll tell you that story in a minute. But so what ended up happening was I woke up, and it was the day after Halloween, and I was living with like 5 guys in a townhouse, and I couldn't breathe. And I was like, oh my God, I can't breathe.
Because your pecs were too tight, bro.
Exactly. Pecs were too tight.
Weighing on your lungs.
So I end up going to the hospital. And this is a great story. I go to the hospital, literally my friends, I'm like, I can't breathe. So what do your friends do when you're panicking that you can't breathe?
Punch you in the stomach? I don't know. They're dumb. They're
dumb.
They're in college.
Right?
I don't know.
They drop me off at the emergency room. They literally pull up to the drive-thru, push me out of the car, and drive away.
Yeah.
And this is before Uber, right? So I'm like, these are awesome friends. They actually were awesome friends. But anyway, so I go there, and long story short, when the doctor's saying, do you drink? I'm like, yeah, I drink. He's like, do you do drugs? I'm like, no. Never. I've never smoked pot in my life. I've never done anything in my life. I'm like, nope, never done that. He's like, how often do you drink? I'm like, he said, every day. I said, not on Wednesday. Are you kidding me?
I'm not a savage. I'm a gentleman.
So I end up, the doctor looks at me and he says, how much are you drinking? I'm like, 1 case a day, I guess. Why? Is that a lot? And he's like, dude, do you know what that is insane. I'm like, no, it's not. My buddies are doing it too. Like, no, it's not. I'm just keeping up. So he just looked me in the eye and he said, look, here's the deal. You're heading down a very dark road, and you can roll the dice. You can roll the dice and continue to drink and see what happens. But I'm telling you, nothing good is going to happen. Or you can make the decision to stop drinking. And I'm 20. And I literally, right there and then, decide I'm not going to drink. And I have not had a sip of alcohol since I was 20. And in a single day, and it was interesting because when at UVA, if you had an alcohol related issue, like going to the hospital where you can't really breathe, you have to go see a counselor. Mm-hmm. So I go see a counselor, and the counselor's like, why do you drink so much? And I literally said to him, because I can. I've never been in a fight in my life. I've never driven drunk in my life. I get straight A's. I'm just not seeing the downside from it other than obviously what just happened to me. So and he said, well, let's talk about the relationship with you and your mother. And I'm like,
whoa.
like,
out of your pay grade, sir.
right.
Like out of your pay grade. Stay in your lane.
Exactly. I'm like, what does my mom have to do? I have a great relationship with my mom. He's like, oh. And I said, look, dude, I'm only here because I have to as a school rule.
Yeah.
I said, look, I'm just not going to drink anymore. And it's all good. He said, I bet you start drinking within a month. I said, ooh, is that a dare? I'm like, ooh. I said, I bet I never have a drink in my life. I'm binary. I'm on or I'm off. Dude, I'm off. And I'm fine with that. I'm completely cool with that. So I turn it off and I haven't had a drink since. Now, when I turn that off, I'm in college. I'm like, well, what am I going to do? And I say, all right, now I need to really get serious and think about the rest of my life. What is it that I want to do? And I'm 20. I'm a puppy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I want to go into entertainment. So I switch on binary entertainment. I'm going to be in film, TV. I'm going to figure this out, even though UVA has nothing for me. And I thought about dropping out of college. I said, I'm going to drop out because I don't know if this university is going to give me what I want. I go to the dean. The dean says, you know what? Before you drop out, keep in mind that there is such a thing as independent studies at UVA. You can make up your own classes and get credit for it. So I end up doing an independent study with Steven Soderbergh, who lived in the area.
That's cool.
He had just won Cannes with Sex, Lies, and Videotape, tracked him down. And I said to him, how do you make it in entertainment? And I got credit for this. He said, do everything yourself. Learn to shoot, learn to edit, learn to write, learn to direct. Just do it yourself. He said, go find an internship somewhere at a video house. I mean, this is way before nonlinear digital editing.
Yeah.
He's like, go find an internship at a video house and just make a bunch of stuff, which is exactly what I did. I volunteered my time it was called the Darden Graduate School of Business Department of Visual Communications. And I was working, they had a camera and editing decks. And I'm like, I'm in. I'm an intern here. Made my own short stuff, wrote a book, wrote a screenplay, got out of college, raised money, made a movie, started a company, got an investor to buy us the first Avid nonlinear digital editing system in the DC area out of the basement of my parents' house. We started making CD-ROMs. This is way back in the day. We made a World War II video where Tom Clancy was the host. We developed a specialty in sport TV and science TV. And in Vienna, Virginia, like I'm all in all the time, go, focusing on being in entertainment. We ended up, my business partner, who's also my brother-in-law, he and I just built this little tiny idea for a business we had a production company, a post-production company, a graphics company, a music library. We even had a clothing line. We created a legitimate big business that we ended up selling. And we ended up growing it, selling it. And Sports Science is that property that people know me best from. And Sports Science was one of those all-in properties. I mean, the story after story after story that I can give of, look, I'm either on or I'm off.
Wow.
And when I'm on, I'm on.
Okay, so a couple morals of the story. One, start your journey with a case of Beast Heavy and see where it goes. Take it to the failing point. So everybody buy your case and start drinking heavily for that moment. No, but I want to get to that point because what you're talking about is like a superpower. Like this on-off thing can also be a super curse, but in some ways it's a superpower that most of us don't have. Most of us, we do waffle around. For 99.999% of people, that counselor you went to was right. You know, you say, oh, I'm never drinking again. And then fucking 4 days later, you're like, woo, I feel good again. You know, and so what is it? What do you attribute that to? Is this just like a genetics thing? Is this an upraising thing? Is this like just who you are?
I would attribute it to, I think we're all unique. I do think that we all have this OCD gene in us. I think everybody, and I mean this, I think everybody is compulsive about something. Like whether or not it's, whether it's not biting your nails. Like people just do that and they just unknowingly have this habit that's ingrained in them. I feel like my habit is living. Like I'm compulsive about living to the fullest and pushing myself to the max. And I'll give you a really good example of I was never an endurance athlete ever in my life. I mean, I ran, cross country in high school, which is 3 miles. what my best friend ran the Marine Corps marathon. And what do buddies say when one guy does something? He's like, hey, just finished the marathon. What do you say? I'm like, weren't there like 25,000 other people? I mean, like, congratulations. I said to him, this is back in 96. I said, well, I'm going to do an Ironman. What's an Ironman? Just sounds harder than a marathon.
Right.
So in the marathon, in the Ironman, I look it up and it's a 2.4 mile open water swim. Small problem. I didn't know how to swim. 112
miles.
miles.
Have to change your body shape a little bit if you're that overbuilt upper body type of guy.
So I ended up. So this is the God's honest truth, and this is where you'll see like how binary I am. When I said I want to do an Ironman, I weighed 198 pounds. I lost 47 pounds. I had to learn how to swim. I didn't own a bike, and you have to bike 112 miles, and I'd never run more than a 5K. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to do all that in a day. And I'm going to go to New Zealand by myself to just do it, just to outdo my friend. Like that. I'm just going to do that. So I fly over to New Zealand. I trained for like 8 weeks. So the losing weight process took longer than 8 weeks, but I trained for this Ironman for like 8 weeks. Mm-hmm. I'm in New Zealand, and my friend calls me up and says, listen, I know you're trying to outdo me, but honestly, for your own sake, you should try to swim more than a lap in a pool because swimming in the open water, you could actually drown. So I'm like, whatever. But they have a fun swim 2 days before the race. It's 2 miles in Lake Taupo in New Zealand. I go swimming and I start swimming in the open water. And when I say I've never been swimming in the open water, I'm like just not drowning, moving, propelling myself.
Right.
I'm 5-10 minutes into this as a fun swim. It's like a fun activity. And the thought that goes through my mind is, this is going to be the worst death story of all time. I'm going to drown, and it's going to be man drowns trying to outdo his friend in New Zealand because he didn't know how to swim. So I end up getting out of the water. I go see an Olympian who was there that was giving a swim clinic. And I just said to him, I got to learn how to swim and fast. He's like, all right, this is how you do it. He shows me how to swim. It's called catch-up swimming. Day of the race came. The day of the race came. I'm in the water with 1,100 people. It's like being in a washing machine.
Yeah.
I end up getting out of the water 100th. I'm top 10% in swimming.
Whoa.
And I'm like, oh my God, I can actually swim and I'm okay at it. Like I'm in the top 10% of this field. It's that binary aspect where I'm like, oh my God, like I'm by myself in New Zealand, like just for the hell of it. That aspect in, like you said, the superhuman sort of like on or off, I think we all do have it. Mm-hmm. It's whether or not you're willing to do it, because we're all physically capable of doing insane stuff. We're all mentally capable of doing incredible stuff. We're all spiritually capable, but are you actually willing to do it? That's the question. My answer is, when you say, are you willing to be nice to people? Are you actually willing to go out of your way to help somebody for no reason, to get nothing in return? I'm the guy that says, yeah, I'm willing to do that because I know that's the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. Mentally, physically, I'm willing to push myself because that's who I am. That's how I'm wired.
Almost like an ethos.
It is.
Yeah. And, the only other person who I've seen who has that kind of extreme level is someone I talk about a lot in the book, which is Bodie Miller. And he was a longtime friend. And I called his skill that he had, I called it mental override. Whereas like when everybody else is waffling about, could you do this? Should you do this or not? He just had this button that says, no, I do it. And there was no negotiation with that. It was like 100-pound pack hill sprint. And you're like, oh man, maybe I can walk out. And he was like, that was not an option. He would die first. He would just die first. Like that was the way he went. And that is this kind of inborn superpower that I think we all have, because it's just choice. We all have the ability to choose. It's just about whether we acknowledge how powerful we are, acknowledge that we do have that ability. Like one of the dopest stories I heard was at this dinner, And it was a dinner with the at the MAPS function. And it was an addict who was addicted to pain pills. And he had a lot of conditions, a lot of challenging things, a lot of things he could have used as excuses for why he was taking these pain pills. And he goes, and there's a lot of psychiatrists in the room. He goes, "You want me to tell you how the best way to stop taking pain pills, to get over your addiction?" Said, "This is what I did. I put the bottle on the countertop, and I didn't take another fucking pill." And it was just like this mic drop moment. You see all the psychiatrists go, oh, terrible advice. I'm like, no, that's fucking brilliant. Because he just decided that, no, I control this body. I control this hand. I control this mind. I'm not going to take another fucking pill. And we all have that power.
I think we do. And I spoke to Dr. Drew, and there's something that's really interesting is I asked Dr. Drew, why was I able to stop drinking? And he drilled down and said, the reason being is that you were not doing it to alter your state of mind. That wasn't your goal. Your goal was to have a cold beverage in your hand. And that was the experience to you. And that is true. Although you would become intoxicated, I wasn't craving the intoxication. This is where I tell everybody, I would be the single worst drug addict of all time. Because if I were to take a drug that made me feel crazy good, I would just say, give me more of that right this second, right now, nonstop. There is no, like, I will not leave until I'm doing that. I would be horrible at somehow taking something that made me feel different because I know myself. And when people say, look, you're 46 years old now, certainly you can have a beer. I tell everybody, I know I can't. Like that's the difference between you and me, is that while some people tempt fate, I know that my fate with that doesn't have a hat. Maybe I can be moderate, and maybe I can be obsessive about being moderate. But what if I'm wrong? And right. I might be wrong. And I know I'm not willing to take that chance.
Yeah, I guess there's that other side of the coin. That extremism could flip to the dark side really easily. I mean, because you were similarly that same guy who drank a case of beer until you wound up in the hospital. You know, like you have both of those sides. It's just a really interesting thing. But now it seems like knowing that's your power and that's your weakness, you can kind of steer your life towards that. And so it's a moment of self-reflection where you get to say, all right, this is what I'm really good at. Let me steer this towards what I love and kill it. And let me steer away from the things that are going to fucking kill me.
And that's what I really pray for every night. I mean, I pray morning, noon, and night, and I pray for the strength to recognize that I can do good in this world. And I can also do bad. I mean, I know that is inside all of us. And yeah. I think acknowledging what's interesting is when people look at other people's situation, you look at someone who's, homeless, addicted to drugs, they've gone crazy. They look at that situation. A lot of people go, oh, that person just made a ton of bad choices and they wound up in that spot. And a lot of society will say, well, that's just what happens. I'm like, yeah, that's what happens. But the amount of empathy that I have for those people who have gone down a dark road and have wound up in a place where they don't want to be, I have a tremendous amount of empathy because I look at someone who's caught in a terrible situation, and I do say to myself, that could have been me.
Sure.
I mean, it could be anybody. And the recognition, we did a show as part of our production company years ago. We did a show. It was called Crime 360 on A&E, and it was all about, it was like the real life CSI. And we talked to a lot of police detectives and chiefs and said, why, this cycle of drugs and murder and prostitution and people living on the corner in the street. And it's like this endless cycle. Literally one of the captains I spoke to just said, you know what? One day, nobody intends for that to happen, but there is a day when they all cross a line that is a point of no return. And they don't know what day it actually is. It just happens. And that's what I think about, these points of no return in your life. And when you say, well, of course, there's always a chance of redemption. Yes. But
There's tipping points nonetheless.
There are tipping points, and there are also situations. I like to analogize life with golf. The worse you are at golf, you hit it off the tee, the ball's in the weeds, it's on the wrong hole, hitting an impossible shot. The reason why you're trying to hit that impossible shot that, even Rory McIlroy or Jordan Spieth would have a difficult time hitting out of is because you suck at golf. So when you try to hit that second shot, you're trying to hit a shot that a pro would have a hard time hitting. So the worse you are at golf, the harder it is to play. Yeah. That's the same thing with life. If you allow yourself to make bad decisions and wind up in a place where you didn't want to be, it's just like spraying the ball off the tee. Now it takes an extraordinary person to get out of the situation that you're in, and you're probably in it because you're not extraordinary at recognizing things you shouldn't do. So it's like you're the least qualified person to get out. It's hard enough as is, and now you're in a spot where it's hard for anyone to get out.
Sure. And certainly you got to have a lot of compassion, a lot of empathy for that situation, but also see the silver lining of that is if you do make it out, then you have all of those skills that you've acquired on that long, arduous climb. That resistance training, getting back to the path, will make you a better, stronger person than the person who's kind of stayed in the fairway and had it pretty easy.
I love that idea of life is resistance training.
Yeah.
I love that expression that you just used for it, because it is beautiful. Recognizing it's hard to recognize in a dark moment where this is actually making you stronger and it's going to make you more resilient once you get out. The challenge is you got to get out.
Yeah.
And that's the trick. And I've been very fortunate, with the when you look at some people's situations and you say, look, they don't have a spouse who loves them. They don't have a family that's close with them. They don't have a circle of friends that have, helped lift them up. They just have drifted away. I've been ridiculously fortunate. I have wonderful parents, wonderful family, wonderful set of friends. My wife is my soulmate. My kids are wonderful. Like that keeps you in check, right? From going off of the path. And that's where I sit today, where when I say I am grateful and I pray morning, noon, and night that I use the gifts that have been given to me and that I believe everybody possesses, just using them for as much good as possible.
That's one of the strongest motivating forces that there is. Because if you start focusing and saying, how can I do this for me? It can get you there. It can get you a few places. The ego is a motivating force, but it's like that coal burning engine. It's like burning dirty fuel. But if you actually want to dedicate your gifts and your accomplishments in these things to the greater good, that's like an endlessly renewing energy source. That's going to keep you motivated way better than any of this other shit.
It really is. And if you look at something like Sports Science, is a property that we created a really long time ago. My premise in creating Sports Science was that I'm going to build the ultimate lab, invite the world's greatest athletes in and push them to the limit. Everyone said you're crazy because you're not going to get the best athletes to come into your lab for free. You're going to have to pay them a fortune. And I said, I don't think that greatness demands money. I just don't. I think that greatness just earns money and it's a byproduct. But if I invite the world's greatest athletes to a location where they can push themselves to the limit and show off what they have and to learn something, I think they're going to take it and you don't have to pay. So we did over 1,800 segments of Sports Science, across Fox and ESPN. Never paid anybody to show up in the lab. Had the world's greatest athletes, and my premise was proven correct because I'm like, I don't think when you say to Drew Brees, come and I want to test your accuracy, I don't think they're like, well, pay me money and I'll show up. They're like, great athletes. Like I'm going to step up because A, I know I'm going to rise to the challenge, and B, I might learn something and that might make me better that day.
Yeah. Yeah. So for people who aren't familiar and haven't watched a bunch of the episodes, tell us some of the cool things you found, some cool stories, some cool insights into the people that, you got to work with and see.
Here's one thing that is interesting is that the best of the best in team sports are not the biggest, strongest, and fastest in their sport. And in fact, being big, strong, and fast, if you look at it on a graph, is a disadvantage in many ways. If you look at, I just did a TEDx talk about, that's going to be released in a couple weeks, but we look at this idea that being bigger, stronger, and faster is better. Well, if we look at the top 5 running backs of all time by yards gained, we see Emmitt Smith, Walter Payton, Barry Sanders, Curtis Martin, LaDainian Tomlinson, all 6 feet and below, average weight somewhere around 210. None of them are the fastest in the league. None of them are the fastest on their team. Most of them were not the fastest at their own position on their own team. And I'm 5'8.5". Walter Payton was like an inch taller than me. And here Emmitt Smith is like a little bit taller than I am. So how are these men able to rack up so many yards? It's because F equals MA, force is mass times acceleration. The bigger the mass, the bigger the acceleration, the greater the force. So if you're really big and really fast, you experience a tremendous amount of force because there's another Newtonian law that says when 2 objects collide, both objects experience the equal amount of force. So if you're really big and really fast, every time you get hit, you're experiencing a huge amount of force.
That's how Bo Jackson got his leg ripped out of his socket.
Too big, too fast, right?
Great for Tecmo Bowl.
Great for Tecmo Bowl. And also it was interesting. He played 8 years of baseball, believe it or not. And a lot of people are like, wow, he had a short career. He is the greatest athlete of all time. We did a huge study on it. Despite his short career in the NFL, he played 8 years of baseball. Jim Brown played 10 years of football. He's the only athlete to ever be an all-star in 2 professional sports. Crazy stat.
Crazy.
It's a crazy stat. So the idea of one thing that I've learned is just because your body type is a certain way, just because you feel like you might be at a disadvantage. When people, I can't stand the notion when people say, oh, those men and women that are elite athletes, they just wake up and they roll out of bed and they're great. I'm like, that is selling them so short on how hard they actually have to work, because everybody at the elite level was that kid from their town who was the all-star, who did wake up, roll out of bed, and was better than everybody else in 6th grade or 9th grade or 12th grade. But when you get to the NBA or the NFL or the NHL or any professional league, everybody was that person.
Yeah.
So you have to work that much harder. And it's so interesting that if you look at any graph in terms of success, whatever career that you're in, people are like, oh, I want to be the what? Tallest, what? The richest, what? Whatever metric you want to use, usually the best of whatever it is that you're looking at, to me, happens in the Goldilocks zone. I call it big enough, fast enough, strong enough, but you're not the top of any of those curves. And I think that if you apply that principle across everything that you look at, you start to see, oh, you know what? I need to have balance.
Yeah.
I need to surpass average and approach excellent in a lot of categories, but I don't want to be the best in all of them because I can't point to somebody who was the best. Was Michael Jordan the tallest? Was he the fastest? What you're like, of course not. He had that right balance of being that perfect athlete, but he's not going to be the biggest, the strongest, or the fastest.
I mean, I think LeBron James could be that outlier in that argument, but I think your point is super well made. It's actually the second time this has come up recently, and I didn't have time to fact check it, but in another podcast I was on, Luke Story was talking about how the top 10 IQs, he's saying, all have bosses. Like they all work for somebody else. Like the very smartest people are still taking a salary in some way, shape, or form from somebody else because they weren't the entrepreneurs who are more, like you said, more balanced, well-rounded in that, so-called Goldilocks zone. And it's really interesting to reflect upon that because I think we have so many of these self-limiting ideas like, oh, if I was this, I could do this. If I was that, well, maybe you are that person. Maybe you are that motherfucker. Maybe you are the person who is just right. And you just got to believe it and you just got to go for it.
It's interesting I take Lizzie, my wife, as a perfect example. After I did that Ironman in New Zealand, I've subsequently gone on to do a whole bunch of endurance events, and I have realized I've hit my limit. So I'm binary. I did 5 Ironman triathlons. I did Leadville 100 mountain bike race. I did a 13-mile swim, from Hermosa to Santa Monica pier. I did a bunch of crazy events, and then I started breaking. I would sneeze and blow out a disc in my back. And I'm like, all right, this is no longer good for me. I need to shift to something else. My wife is a great example though of someone that, so here she is, she's a mother of 2. She went to Princeton. She went to Harvard. She danced in a professional company in Boston. She's a yoga instructor. She was just unbelievably aware of her body. She looked at me doing endurance events and she said, you know what? I think I want to do that. Now she's 5 feet tall, a buck, maybe, little over 100 pounds. Like she's a small human being. And when your wife says, I want to do endurance events, you, in the back of your mind, you're like, that's cute. I wish you well. I will support you. I hope you enjoy it. Me not realizing, wow, she has such incredible body awareness. She went out, ran her first half marathon in 1:25. She was third overall for women. She goes out and runs a 10K and sets the course record. She does an Ironman with me and beats me by over an hour. I mean, she's the kind of person that shows up and she has this perfect balance. And she had no idea. She was never a runner, cyclist, or swimmer. She had it all because she had such an intellect and body awareness that when she applied it to endurance events, she became that person who was really, really good at it.
Yeah, that's cool to see what you're actually capable of, when you're not really sure. Like, man, maybe I'll try that. And then all of a sudden you're like, damn, I'm good. Just like you with the swimming. And I think that's something that's available for all of us in some way, shape, or form. I thought I was like a musical nightmare, and I thought I could never play. I couldn't carry a tune. I couldn't do anything. And I went out for a musical in college and just fucking did it. Cause I think I had a crush on one of the girls who was in the theater. Right. Her name's Sally. Sally, if you're listening out there, yes, it's true. I acknowledge that I was mildly obsessed. And anyways, I actually got like a major part, like a singing role in that. And that was this kind of crazy moment. And I just gave it hell. I had nothing to lose. It was like, it's a fucking musical. Like, what do I have? I just raised hell at the audition and got the part. And it was like this cool kind of recognition, like, oh, and they had to change my song a little bit to fit because I wasn't a great singer, never will be a great singer. But I got out there on stage and, did a good job. And it was just this thing, like, who would have ever thought? If anybody heard me sing karaoke before that, they'd be like, Aubrey in a fucking musical? Get out of town. You got to be kidding. And it's just, we're capable of so much more than we think is possible. And that's fucking rad.
I love that. My wife and I started a band called Brink of Midnight, the same title as our podcast. The way that we started this band is I was very musical when I was little. I played violin in elementary school, and I excelled at it, but I didn't like it. So being binary, I was just like, I'm not playing that. But unfortunately, I threw away all instruments until I stopped drinking in college. And then I'm like, oh man, I want to play guitar. So I went down to Tower Records when Tower Records existed. And I walked in, said to the cashier, who's the best guitarist I lived in Northern Virginia. I'm like, who's the best guitarist in Virginia? He said, oh my God, a guy that works here, his name is Louis Denslow. He stocks shelves in the back, but he's this thrash metal guitarist. I literally go back to the stock room. I'm like, ask for Louis. He comes out. He's like, just black hair, looks like, typical thrash metal. And I'm like, I just want to learn how to play guitar. You got to teach me. He ends up teaching me. He's this amazing human being, teaches me guitar. I learned guitar. I start excelling in that, but then life got in the way and I put it down. So I picked it up 20 years later, just as an outlet. And I start writing music. I teach myself Pro Tools. I start writing music. Lizzie walks by while I'm playing and she starts singing over a song that I was recording. And I'm like, oh my God, you're amazing. You have an amazing voice. You're coming up with this melody that I could never hear. How did you do this? She's like, well, I was classically trained in the Long Beach Opera. We'd been married 10 years. Mm-hmm. She probably told me 50 times. So we put out a Christmas song called Christmas is My Favorite Time of Year, just as a total whim. Sirius XM Holly ends up picking it up and it ends up charting at number 30. Like we made a song that we put out to the world. It was well received. Oh my God, how did that happen? And it only happened because we were just willing to say, what the hell?
Yeah.
I mean, what do we have to lose?
There's also something to be said. Robert Greene in his book Mastery talks about the DaVinci Effect. And he kind of makes that point that it wasn't that DaVinci was so excellent at any one particular thing. It's that he was really good at enough things that he could harness all of those skills and bring that kind of wisdom to explore that topic in a different way. And I think that's another cool idea for people as well. Like, no matter where you've gone, where your journey has wandered, you can take that wisdom and generally apply something of it to whatever your next pursuit is, and it will be valuable. You know, these things aren't in bubbles. Maybe there's a few categories like accounting skills or something, but even that, like your knowledge on another business in another way, you can bring that in and be more well-rounded, be more balanced, and actually catch up even faster to the people who've just focused on that one single thing.
It's interesting how people like to look at life as being linear. And when people have vision, and you have vision and you say, I want to go there. I've got my head up, eyes forward. I'm looking at the horizon. Like, you almost can't think of a path, no matter where you are, whether it's by bike or on foot or by sea, where that path is a straight line. Like, you're going to wander way to the left and way to the right and you're going to get storms coming. You're going to have obstacles in your way. It's never going to be a straight line. And I love to think of it as it's non-linear living. You're like sometimes you're going backwards and you're going sideways, but each of those turns and that you make, you're learning something of how to continue to go forward. And that idea of don't look at life as being linear. Look at it as pull things from your past, take those mistakes, or take each step that you've made and see how it keeps you moving forward. How that's supplying you with energy is one that I think is important for people to recognize, that it's more non-linear living than it is just a straight line.
Yeah. I mean, we're all headed towards a similar destination. You know, but you look at the greatest rivers on the planet Earth. You look at like the Amazon River. Go fucking pull that up on Google Earth. You know, like look at the direction that thing goes.
Right.
You know,
Everywhere.
It's going exploring all over, picking up flora and fauna and nourishing life on this random bank, and then doubling back and cutting through and crossing borders and going to different territories. Yeah, it ultimately ends up in the ocean. You know, but that is the life that we end up having. And to think that we have to be this rushing straight line in a hurry to get to some destination, there's no destination. There's just the flow, man. There's just the flow of that river, and just pick up wherever you go, wherever you find yourself, you know, go to the shore, talk to the people, look at the animals, you know, experience that thing, and then get back in and keep flowing.
I love that analogy. I think it's really powerful. You know, it's really powerful. And I think the key is that it's in all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you got some exciting news that you got to be vague about with this sports science property, yep, which is super dope. Every time I see it on, I'm like, yes. But it just seems like it keeps going. It's maybe even getting bigger. Yeah.
So I did sports science once for Fox. We then did it again for ESPN. The whole team, we're incredibly grateful. You know, we did, like I said, probably 1,800 segments between the two networks. We won 6 Emmys. It afforded me all kinds of opportunities that I'm ridiculously grateful for. The 3.0 is going to be coming out in a bigger, better way. We're going to be making an announcement in a few weeks, and super excited. And it certainly is building upon, like I've been saying this whole podcast, building upon all the lessons that I learned previously and applying it not only to a business model that I think has a larger upside, but also touching more people's lives even outside of the world of sport. I think that I was very fortunate to be in the right place, the right time, to be involved with the right project, the right idea with sports science. And I think that this next iteration is looking not only at sport, but beyond it, of really trying to positively affect as many people as I can. I mean, if there's one thing that I want to do, you know, it's be a great husband, be a great father, be a great friend, and also just be a net positive, so that when I leave this planet, I've left as much positive energy as possible.
I think you're on your way, my friend. I think you're on your way. If people want to dive into your podcast too, what's an episode you think that really stands out to you as a good place to start?
You know, we've had so many amazing guests. The podcast is called Brink of Midnight, BRINK of Midnight. You can find everything out on brinkofmidnight.com. It's on every platform where podcasts are. I mean, you literally can start with the Ray Lewis episode in season 1 and go to Rob Riggle and Dr. Drew and Damon John and Larry Fitzgerald, and keep going on and on. You can start at season 2 where we had Sage Steele, and one of the most stunning podcasts we've had. We just had Gary Vaynerchuk on this past week. We're having luminaries in their field, and you're going to be a guest on it.
So that's going to be with me.
That's going to be a great place to start.
Yeah. Beautiful, man. Well, it's great dropping in with you like this.
I can't thank you enough for having me. I think you're doing wonderful things. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, brother. Likewise. Thanks, everybody.